Hello, and welcome to part 4 of our Boba Fett illustration live draw. Live draw? Yeah. We'll call it a live draw anyway, even if it's not how you normally would. So we're going to open up the illustration, and here's where we left it last time. So yeah, last time we finished working around the gun, and for some reason there's the calendar of the date I'd done this filming. So if you're watching in the future, there you go. So just again some base strokes to wake my hands up, and I remembered to pull out the window straight away, which I'm pleased with, because usually I'm a quarter of the way into the drawing before I realise. So we plonk that down to the right hand corner and we can get on with some drawing today. So yeah, I did say that I was going to try work on the right hand side today, but I feel that round here deserves some work, because it's all just pencils at the minute. I've kind of done an arm already, so I'm thinking to stick down maybe on the belts, on the buckles. Could be quite interesting. So this is the gun holster. Guns are cool. So I'll start down here. Again, just some of those really quick strokes. Work the brush using some light pressure again. Well, I guess I need to cut this part of the video out, because I think I forgot to pause the recording here while I ran off and done something. So I'm going to clap when something actually happens. No, I'm not. I'm just going to skip forward. And we're back. So, yeah, working on the holster, mixing some horizontal and vertical lines. Now just give it a strong edge at the bottom. Have to erase back into that. Yeah, I feel this kind of cladding style could be quite interesting to work on. Not really done a lot of that. So just following the line work. Defining shapes, again with these solid lines. I never realized how much YouTube videos were just kind of sitting here talking to yourself. It's pretty weird. Bit strange to do. Especially while drawing, when I am actually concentrating on what's happening. Erasing back in there. Keyboard shortcuts, always good. Especially for erasing and choosing your brushes. Lots of back and forth. Trying to use very light touches here. Realizing that that pocket needed to be a bit thicker. And trying to erase some of the bulk to define that edge, basically. So when you zoom out, you can still instantly tell where's the front face of the pocket. So as I said, I'm going to be working on these belts and buckles and these different areas today. Belt buckles, obviously a bit tricky for me for some reason. Very weird thing to get confused by. As was this stroke, done it 4 or 5 times. Lots of shadows, lots of depth, lots of these little flicks again. Quite fun to do. I think this video may be a bit shorter than some of the previous steps, but I'm hoping I still can get a fair bit of work done in this short time. I think that's why I'm trying to concentrate on some of the more interesting sections. I can always jump and skip boring parts. See, when the screen's rotated like this is why I do put that little second window so you can see exactly what I'm doing straight on. And now you can see what I was doing sideways. Bringing down, following the leg down. Trying to keep my strokes light, but still heavy enough to define the shape. back to the holster, just trying to finalize that before I move on to too many different sections. And again, just following the leg down, really. Picking out shadows where I feel they will work. Although maybe I do need more shadows. Constantly thinking about where the light's hitting the person and how the shadows would organically appear. And that's something I forgot to turn off. This is a little micro break to save your eyes. If I quickly exit that there, that shouldn't bother us again in this recording. I do forget to turn it off quite often. Now, see here, this is what I'm talking about, trying to add the darker shadows as I think about how the light is hitting. Trying to keep it as organic as you can, really. Trying to create natural shadows where they would be. Now following the tip of the armour. Ooh, that's a weird stroke. There we go. As we thicken it up, I can hide all of my mistakes. There. The drawing is starting to come together quite nicely. I'm quite happy with how it looks currently. Starting to define the shape of the belt. Again, I'm going to use my technique here of basically going over the edges and rubbing them out. Something I do when I traditionally draw as well. So if you ever come to a comic convention and buy a hand-drawn sketch, you may see lots of eraser marks. Again, doing the same thing again here, just with a lot smaller strokes. So done it once with the big definition, erased all the marks, and then zoomed in and done the exact same thing again. That allows me to not really have to work too hard to call out the edge, the top edge of the belt, because of the sharp stop where I've used the eraser. Now, I talked about this in the last episode, the different sections of Boba Fett's waist. I believe they're pockets or could be grenade holders, and how I didn't want to draw every single little line, but I decided they did need a bit more than what I had done in the last episode. So I thought about adding some of these little flicks just to simulate a ridge, and again just rubbing out where they travel too far. I'm not completely sold on that as an idea, but for now we can leave it. Very strong edge there. I'm not sure on that. Oh, sorry, keyboard shortcut. Wrong keyboard shortcut even. Yeah, I'm not sure if that edge that I just drew was a bit too harsh for the light. Trying 3 or 4 times to do the same stroke and failing miserably. Trying to again define those edges where the two sections of harsh black join. It does cause some merging if you're not careful. So a tip I picked up from a Marvel illustrator was to basically just pull out some little edges with either, if traditional, use white out, Tipex basically. But digitally we've obviously got an eraser there, which makes life a lot easier. I may need to define it a bit more looking at it again. But for now, we'll jump down here and start looking at this side again. Because of how close we are to all that definition in the arm, I'm a bit worried about causing too much hassle for myself in these areas. Sometimes I feel it should be a bit simpler than what I do. Lots of pockets. Lots and lots of pockets on Boba Fett. Constantly, as I said, thinking about where the light's hitting. So this would all be shadow because the light just wouldn't hit this side of a three-dimensional object. So quite a lot of shadow here. But it does feel like it fights against the rest of the shadow because all the shadows on the left, and then this one section feels a bit weird. See, I'm trying to make that line a bit thinner here. And I'm getting all my pressure sensitivity wrong on the tablet there. But this feels a bit weird because of how harsh the lines are. And if the light is hitting it, it should be a lot finer, as you can see. So just trying to pull out some shadows at the bottom and trying to define the shape of the object, pulling out a lot more shadow here because it would be casting a shadow on his belt as the light's hitting. It's a lot thicker down the bottom, and that's kind of getting a bit more how I wanted it. Got to be careful here with the rest of his pockets, because if the light's very bright on the right hand side, I can't craft too much shadow underneath. Zooming out in the complete wrong place and zooming in the wrong place as well. Excellent. So the neck needs some definition. Well, the bottom of the head even. So we could add some stronger lines there. But yeah, maybe I'll just add some detailed lines around here. Now here we start the right hand side. Haven't really touched on here at all. Yeah, so fresh start. And of course we start on a weapon. So Boba Fett's grappling hook, if I remember correctly. I believe it's a grappling hook. I know that it is definitely a solid object, and as such my lines need to be a lot straighter than they currently are. So that needs to be fixed. Just starting to drop in some of the basic shadows. Again, pulling out the edges, using some of these very faint, easy to use brush strokes. Starting now to think more about this arm as a whole and these areas behind the weapons, which the light's going to be hitting quite predominantly. So I don't want to use too much dark shadow. Same around these fingers, although this part here will be filled in as I do so. The knuckles and the fingers, the light's going to be hitting them quite predominantly, so you can't really use too much black. It doesn't work. Here, starting to define fingers. Fingers are something I've struggled with drawing ever since I went into the traditional medium, and I'm not sure why. Just something I struggle with, still do. Usually hide my hands behind guns, objects, if you look at some of my other illustrations, or I end up drawing them 8 or 9 times just to try and make them look good. Even here, as I'm drawing, I know that finger, the base of the finger, feels weird. Yeah, this finger here, it also feels gigantic compared to the other fingers. But for now, everything's for now. Just trying to define some more knuckles here. Doesn't look perfect, but it's not as awful as I was worried about. Pulling out the gauntlet here. Gauntlet? The hand armor. Again, starting to really try to pull out this arm a bit. Getting all the pieces together to really bring the illustration a bit more to life. As I said earlier, using that eraser tool to define the fingertips, as I've realised that Gauntlet will need a lot more shadow, a lot more detail. Trying to work back into some of the darkness. You could see there in the visor. You use the eraser tool, quick flick, create some depth. Now we move back down to where we just were, trying to look at the groin area. And the other thing with these little flicks is they do, Boba Fett's armor is scarred and rough and destroyed, and these little flicks will give those little definitions that usually I would do in color. Few more bits over here. Try to define this edge on the pencils. Accident key shut. Quick little autosave. And we're back to the belt buckle, which is where we struggled earlier. So I will get this right this time. I will get this right this time. A few more flicks. And some on the other side as well. A lot more predominant on the other side. Again, shadows. And again, erasing. Using that same technique again. So that's where we're going to leave this for today. So if I zoom out, show you how the piece is looking. It is coming together quite nicely, but we've run out of time today. So part 5, we will continue working on that left leg. So I've hoped you've enjoyed this, and make sure you stick around for part 6. Bye bye.